Good afternoon, and welcome everyone to our PeaceHealth webinar on mindfulness for heart health. The information that we're presenting today is general in nature, and just remember it doesn't replace the advice of your personal healthcare provider. In fact, we do encourage you to talk with your doctor about specific questions related to your own diet and health conditions. My name is Summer Meyer, and I will be your moderator today. Before I introduce our guest speaker, I would like to remind you that PeaceHealth is safe, open, and ready to help when you need us. It's now easier than ever because we are offering video visit appointments. And so if you haven't done so already, it's a good time to set up your My PeaceHealth account. From there, you can make appointments, track vaccinations, receive your test results, and even manage your prescriptions. So if you do have an account, you can log in and just confirm that we have your contact information and that that's up to date. Now, in today's webinar, I want to invite you to engage with us by voting in our polls, by asking questions in the chat, and by completing our survey at the very end. We do read every single comment that you make for us, and we try to adjust and make it better for you the next time. With this housekeeping out of the way, it's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Miss Amy Surface. Amy's clinical interests are in general cardiology, lifestyle medicine, and heart failure management. She runs a lifestyle medicine clinic for cardiac patients to guide them in using food as medicine, stress reduction, and mindfulness techniques. Amy has always known she wanted to be a healer since she was very young, and she even spent time as a candy striper volunteering at St. Joe's Hospital when she was a teen. She continued her health-related volunteer work throughout college and became a physician assistant in 2002. Over time, she discovered a new world of healing, one of body, mind, and soul. Her specialty is affairs of the heart. Amy has a strong belief in the mind-body connection and links that with disease she sees in her clinic and hospital work. She's also trained in mindfulness-based stress reduction and integrative medicine. She's passionate about healing with food, essential oils, and also herbs. She's a native of Vancouver, Washington, and an avid WSU Cougar. Ooh. In her free time, she loves spending time with her husband, her 2 teens, and her dog Otis. She enjoys being creative and spending time in nature and also connecting with her friends. So it's my pleasure to introduce and welcome Amy. Thank you for being here with us today. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you to give our participants a brief overview of today's webinar.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm very happy to be here. So we're going to start by talking about what I consider the pillars of lifestyle medicine, something that I go over in my lifestyle clinic. And then from that, we'll tease out mindfulness. We'll talk about stress, how it affects the heart, the nervous system's involvement, what your body does under stress. And then we'll talk about ways to cope, some things that you can do to make these things better. So we'll start with some facts. For decades, heart disease has been the leading cause of death in Americans. And the frequency of heart attacks is very high in America. So as you can imagine, this has an enormous impact on both the individual patient, but also their families, and then also the medical system itself. Heart disease is one of the most expensive conditions that's treated in our hospitals. So that's a lot of horribly grim statistics. However, the wonderful statistic is that heart disease responds really, really well to lifestyle changes. I've even seen research that shows 80% of heart disease can be avoided with lifestyle changes. So it's something that we want to pay attention to. So like Summer mentioned, I run a lifestyle clinic for my patients, my cardiac patients here in Vancouver. And I've been doing that lifestyle clinic for about 10 years or more. And over time, it's sort of evolved and changed. I've done different things. I've done different amounts of visits. Currently, what I'm doing is an 8-visit program. And over those 8 visits, we talk about what I call the 4 pillars. So we know that lifestyle affects heart disease so much. So I want my patients who haven't had a cardiac event yet to my patients who've had a cardiac event, all the whole gamut of types of patients to be able to have other tools available to them and empower them with these lifestyle changes to help themselves and their health. So the 4 pillars that we talk about, you can see here through the images: nutrition, movement, mindfulness, and stress. We talk about stress reduction. And then the last one is sort of a miscellaneous category of sleep, toxins, smoking, alcohol use, drug use. So those are the 4 that I generally cover in some way, shape, or form. Summer?
Great. Thank you, Amy. So we're going to launch a poll just so we have a feel for you guys. I know you guys can all see us, but I would love for you to take this poll and let us know which of these 4 pillars are you particularly maybe struggling with the most. So I think I successfully launched that poll. Let's see. Yes, the results are coming on in. So it looks like, yeah, thank you guys all. 22%, 31%, 40%. It's so cool. I can see the numbers going up as far as participation. So this is wonderful. I'll just give it a couple more seconds here, see if we can get up to 100% of our participants. We are close. All right, I'll give you guys a 3, 2, 1 countdown, and we'll close the poll. So now I'll share the results with you all so we can kind of see what we have going as far as our poll results. How are those looking, Amy?
Great. Well, we're right on topic because 42% want to learn more about mindfulness. At least they struggle the most with it. So I'm guessing they want to learn the most about it. So that's great.
I love it when that happens. All right, excellent. Thanks everyone for your participation. But I do appreciate the movement and nutrition and miscellaneous that may guide our future webinars. But for now, let me go ahead and hide these results. We'll transition back into the slides and I'll hand it back.
So we definitely don't want to ignore those other things, those other pillars. These images here, you know, when I think about, okay, if there's so much heart disease and we need to have some quick like highlights of what can we do to make our lifestyle better so that we decrease the chance of having this heart disease. These would be the things that I would say have great impact on your health. So if we start on the left, sleep actually has a big impact on your health. So if you're not sleeping well, you know, talk to somebody about that. There could be a reason that you're not sleeping well. It could be that you've got some stress that is making it so that you can't sleep well. So you may need some counseling, you may need some mindfulness, you may need some kind of procedure or study to check for sleep apnea. So looking into that, you know, if you're not sleeping well, talk to your doctor. Avoid toxins, add nutrients. So toxins come in all different forms. Pesticides are a very common version of toxins that we worry about, but also food dyes, that's a toxin that we'd like to avoid. So avoiding toxins, getting as natural as possible, and then adding those nutrients that we don't always get from our food. We like to think we can get all the nutrients we need from food. We've got lots of food that's got lots of nutrients, but sometimes we need a little bit more. So you could also talk to your provider about if there's any vitamins or minerals that you should be adding to your diet. I recommend whole foods with lots of plants. plants are fruits, vegetables, and grains. Gets a little bit sticky for people who are diabetics, food allergies, things like that. So again, you may have to work with your provider to get something settled for you. But in general, I like to recommend whole foods, mostly plant-based diet. And the research for heart disease specifically is really good on that as well. Mindfulness, which we'll come back to. Move your body in some way, shape, or form, whatever you're able to do. And then finally, go inside. What I mean by go inside is have some time for reflection, have some time to process big emotions, feelings. We all have a lot of thoughts about our lives and what's going on in our lives. And sometimes we need some help processing those. So get help if needed. So now we're going to focus in on mindfulness. I love these images because I talk a lot about the nervous system. The nervous system and the heart are closely connected because our nervous system sort of runs a lot of the functions in our bodies and has this, it's sort of like the control panel for a lot of things that happen in our body. So therefore, things that happen in these nervous systems also affect heart disease. So even though the sympathetic nervous system is called fight, flight, or freeze technically, you'll often hear me say fight or flight because it's just a little easier to say. And then our parasympathetic nervous system is that rest and repair. So the way our system was designed is if we imagine ourselves as cave people and we say, oh, it's time to go out for a hunt, we walk out of the cave. So we're in our nice parasympathetic rest and repair system. And we walk out of the cave, there's a saber-toothed tiger, we jump into fight or flight and respond, right? We need to be able to run. So our heart rate goes up, our delivery of oxygen improves so that our breathing quickens so that we can get more oxygen to our brain so we can think through what the next best step is. Our blood gets a little bit sticky in response, like if we're gonna get clawed by a saber-toothed tiger, we need to be able to clot that off. And we're in that nervous system and then we go back into the cave and it's gone. Saber-toothed tiger decides to go somewhere else and we go back down to that parasympathetic. The problem is we have these incredible brains where we're constantly going forward, backward, forward, backward. So we're thinking about things that we saw in the news, we're thinking about a to-do list, maybe we had an uncomfortable conversation with a loved one or a friend, maybe we saw a scary movie. I think most people have experienced that they're sitting in a dark theater and they're watching a scary movie. They're not in danger. So there's no imminent danger in the room with them, but our heart rate increases, right? Our breathing increases because we are responding in our fight or flight nervous system. So what's happening is instead of being in rest and repair and then spiking up to fight or flight and then going back down to rest and repair, we end up being in this sort of low level fight or flight. We know we're not in danger because we're in a movie theater or we're in the parking lot or we're in the car and we're thinking about an uncomfortable conversation or we're thinking about how we don't have enough money in our bank to pay rent. Whatever it is that we're going through, we're in this we're in a little bit of danger. And so our fight or flight kicks in at this low level. The problem is then we're not in our rest and repair. And our rest and repair is where our bodies rest and repair. So our bodies are getting blood and oxygen fully distributed to all our organs. Our digestive system is really mostly active in our rest and repair nervous system. And we're always wanting to be in that whenever we can, because that is the ideal function of our body. That's when our body resets and sort of gets all the homeostasis, the normal functioning of the body. So you can imagine that over years, if somebody is in that low level fight or flight often, they're not going to feel good. Like your body's not doing what it's supposed to be doing to feel really good. So let's remember Rest and repair, that's when we are building our energy blocks, we're digesting food, we're restoring homeostasis, our heart rate is decreased a little bit, and we're healing our body. When we're in our fight or flight, we are moving blood around, we're changing our heart rate, we're changing our oxygen distribution. Our glucose levels are changed. Like I said, we've got to be able to have the energy, that quick energy to run, so we dump our glucose. So as you can imagine from everything I've just said, we don't want to be in our fight or flight nervous system all the time. So when we're in that state of chronic stress, you can see here, cortisol, adrenaline, blood pressure, cholesterol. When we're in that state where we are at that low level of fight or flight all the time, we are more prone to disease, like heart disease, like heart attacks, strokes. We don't want those things to happen. Actually, you'll find that once you've had a cardiac event, a lot of the medicines that we use, we're using them to override or at least manage that fight or flight system a little bit. One of our most popular tools is called a beta blocker, and it has a direct effect on the nervous system. And that goal is to keep things dampened down so that fight or flight is as low as possible, because we want to avoid that sticky blood and that increased heart rate and those glucose dumps. But what's important to know also is we know that being human is really stressful. So maybe you don't have a rent problem. Maybe you don't have a scary situation. Maybe you avoid scary movies. Maybe you don't have a saber-toothed tiger outside of your house all the time. The problem is being a human is stressful. It's a stressful process. And here's where I like to sort of put a plug in for don't compare, because what often happens is people say, I don't have stress. I have no stress at all. And what they mean is, I don't have stress like I see on TV. I don't have stress like my neighbor has stress. So we want to take that comparison component out and just know that life is stressful, being human is stressful, and what really matters is that we learn some coping mechanisms so that we can manage that stress, no matter what that version is. Because what might be stressful to me might be a breeze to you, and what might be a breeze to you might be stressful to me. And it's sort of all about your lens, because what you know, what you don't know, those things can be scary to different people. For example, like if you've got a plumbing issue, we were just talking on the call before about a plumbing issue. If you don't understand what's going on, that might seem really stressful to you, but a plumber who's been doing plumbing for 20 years might come in and be like, oh, this is no big deal, and fix it. Whereas that plumber might, be nervous about something that you're really familiar with. So, everybody has different stressors, and those stresses take a toll on our body. So I think, instead of asking yourself, am I stressed or not? It's really, what are my tools? Because that's what we want. Coping behaviors often turn into, we get this sort of stress over time, and then coping behaviors start turning into the opposite of those 6 things that I showed earlier. So we stop moving and we start sitting on the couch and watching TV, and we stop eating lots of plants, and we start driving through the drive-through because our schedules are packed and things are crazy. So we start drinking alcohol because we had a bad day, or smoking because it has a beautiful response, anti-stress response in the body. So we start doing these things that we know actually aren't healthy for us, rather than taking the initiative and doing some more lifestyle changes that are good for you. And the problem is, you sort of have to preempt it. So again, it's recognize that you probably have stress. Even if it's little, you probably have stress, and you want to have the power and the knowledge to be ahead of it and to be thinking about a plan to keep yourself healthy long term.
I love the way that you phrased that, Amy. Thank you so much. It's nice just to have the reinforcement that the fight, flight, and freeze is actually by design. It's, not
Yeah,
terribly bad necessarily. It's just we don't want
right.
to stay in that state, and we need to get to, you call it rest and repair. I've heard of
Yeah,
it as rest and digest. So that's
yeah,
kind of another phrase that might work for some folks to remember that. Um,
definitely.
and so now at this point in time, I'd like to launch our second poll for the audience to take. And what we'll be asking you this time is, what is your experience with mindfulness? Obviously, this is a mindfulness webinar as it relates to heart health. And we would just like to get an idea about, from our audience, which percentage of you have never heard of it, who all is practicing maybe once or twice, or even maybe regularly. If there's something else not on this list that you would like to comment in, please do use the Q&A section. I think it's the chat section on your screen. And feel free to type in and share with us how or to what extent you have experience with mindfulness. And I'll just leave it open for a few more seconds here. It looks like we're almost up to, oh, there goes the numbers,
Yeah,
71%.
this will be interesting to hear.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you for, looks like Jana is doing some mindful eating, which is great.
I love
Lori's
mindful eating.
practicing from time to time, which is great. Thanks for using that comment box. All right, I'm going to close it up here and let's share out the results from our poll. And you should be able to see those now. How are they looking?
Yeah. So it looks like the majority chose I've practiced it once or twice. That was 47%. So almost 50% of people have just practiced it once or twice, which is great. And then I've never heard of it, 16%. And I practice regularly, 25%.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It looks like there are just a couple more comments I want to read. Looks like Steve's tried mindful meditation about a half a dozen times. And Barbara made the comment that, oh, this is, yeah, sometimes me. I always have great intentions for mindfulness practices, but the second things get crazy and stressful, I kind of stop. Yeah, I am
Yeah,
with you on that one,
I
Barbara.
get
Thank you
that
for
too.
sharing that with us. I'm sure you're not the only one. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hide this now, and let's go ahead and transition back to the slide deck, and I'll hand it back over to you, Amy.
Thank you. Still waiting on that slide, on my end anyways.
Okay, let's see if there's anything I can do here. Sometimes there is a
I
little
know it
delay.
because it's one of my favorite images.
Yeah. Okay, let's see if I transition back and forth again. Did that do it?
Not yet.
Okay. Let me
While
stop
you're
and
getting it working, do you want
reshare.
me to? Oh,
Yeah, I'll go ahead and reshare here.
oh, there we go. Okay. So this is one of my favorite slides. I often show this to patients because to me it's such a beautiful visual. Mindful, two L's, it's actually full, versus mindful, which is when you are in the present moment without judgment. So I'm not labeling the trees, I'm not labeling the sun, I'm not describing what's going on in detail, I'm just present in the current moment without judgment. It sounds so simple and yet it is so hard to do. That's why it's called a practice. So we talked before about how that brain sort of can go forward and backwards, and that gets us into trouble because we're thinking about that conversation that we had with our friend, or we're thinking about the future and how am I going to pay rent, or this is on my to-do list, I got to do this and this and this today. And there is a design for that, similar to the nervous system. There is a beautiful design, and the design is that you're in the cave, you're getting ready to go out, you have to have the recall of, oh yeah, my cousin got mauled by a saber-toothed tiger. I should probably be prepared for that. And the forethought to say, I think I'm going to bring my machete with me in case there's a saber-toothed tiger when I walk out. So that was sort of baked in as part of our survival, to have our brains be able to do that forward and backward thinking. And we abuse it terribly now that things are so fast moving all the time. I think especially here in America, there is a emphasis on production, and production is what equals success. And production means that you have to be doing all the time. And if you're not doing, you should be thinking about what you're doing. The problem with that is we don't have that time for right now. And mindfulness is the right now. So we've got our forward thinking, our backwards thinking. Mindfulness is right now. So mindfulness is going, okay, I'm right here in my seat. The lights are on. I'm a comfortable temperature. I'm not in any danger. And allowing all those things that are forward and backward thoughts to go out of our brains. Now, Ethan Kross recently wrote a book called Chatter, which is really interesting because it's talking about that chatter in your head, that forward, backward. We don't actually want to aim for mindfulness 24/7, which everybody can take a big sigh of relief now, right? Like, oh, you don't have to be in the present moment every second of every day. No, because that would be dangerous. Because remember, I told you, like, our brains were wired for survival, forward, backward. If we were sort of floating in a cloud of now all the time, we wouldn't survive, because we'd forget to prepare the food, or we'd forget to, like, there's some basics that chatter has to be there. But how much chatter do you have? And that's when to really sort of use that barometer and say, how much chatter do I have right now? I have too much chatter. Shortly after I had my second child, a couple of years after, I recognized that the chatter in my head was too much. I had a lot of chatter in my head. So I was constantly either rehashing old stuff in the past, I could have done this better, I should have done this better, or I was worrying, thinking about a bunch of things that were going to happen in the future. And neither was a good scenario, right? Because it was just too much. So I was abusing that beautiful brain capability. And a colleague of mine introduced me to mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, and I took that 8-week course. And I have to say, of the tools in my life that I've learned to handle stress, anxiety, emotions, MBSR is by far and away one of the most powerful tools that I've ever learned. I would be so dramatic as to say life-changing, because I do think that I would be in a very different place if I still had all that chatter going in my head. And, based on all the research that I've, sort of distilled down for you today in our talk about heart disease, I might be heading towards some disease too. So mindfulness-based stress reduction was created, I will refer to it as MBSR, in 1979, so long ago, by John Kabat-Zinn. And he was at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. And it really is one of the most widely researched methods for reducing the negative impacts of stress. It's been researched on all kinds of disease fronts. So they've looked at immune function, they've looked at chronic heart disease, and they're seeing wonderful medical literature come out, and more about how supportive MBSR specifically, but mindfulness in general, can be to improving the immune function, decreasing heart disease, and helping overall well-being. So MBSR specifically is a 8-week course that is a very structured course, and you have to go through special training to be a teacher of MBSR. And it's delivered all around the United States, but there's several different options in the Washington and Oregon area. Some hospitals offer these courses, certainly private folks offer it. I did mine so long ago. I'm not sure what's happening now with COVID. I'm sure some of these are over Zoom. Hopefully they'll be coming back in person soon, because there really is a lovely component to an in-person MBSR course. But because we know that the literature is so good, we know that this is just a wonderful way to override that fight or flight system, drop into the presence of now, and get that homeostasis back in your physical body to support decreasing disease and improving overall well-being. I actually, in my lifetime, I would just dream to see MBSR taught in school, because I think it's such a powerful tool that we could all use for, like I said before, the coping of stress. We all have that stress, and we all need those coping skills, and the research has just shown that MBSR is a wonderful way to do that. So how might you do this? We've talked about why you need to do it. We've talked about how your nervous system works, and it's clear that this is, a priority to get this improved. How can you do it? So you can certainly do the MBSR courses, and I invite everyone to look into their local offerings, because I do think, like I said, for me, I believe it was life-changing. Palouse Mindfulness Online was a student of John Kabat-Zinn himself, who published the course online, and it's free. And so if you're an online learner, I think everybody kind of learns a different way. I'm certainly not an online learner. I'm more of an interactive doer kind of learner. But if you are an online learner, then I highly suggest that you consider looking at that, because that is a lovely way to do the MBSR course. Also, if you have limitations in your ability to be out and about or financial. The other thing is there are lots of apps now that you can get for mindfulness or meditation. Some people say kind of, what's the difference between mindfulness and meditation? It sort of depends on who you talk to. When I first did the MBSR course, I know that I was thinking, well, this basically seems like meditation. But sometimes people think of meditation as like transcendental meditation, where you're reciting a mantra, or you have to do it a certain way. Mindfulness, I feel like, offers a version of meditation that, again, is just back to that present moment without judgment, and learning how to do it in every day. Some of you commented in the chat that you mindful eating, or you use mindfulness in your daily activities, and that's mindfulness. So it's really a matter of you are being mindful if you're right here, right now, and you're not forward or backwards. So the apps that I like, my very favorite is Insight Timer, but Calm and Headspace are also excellent apps for guided meditations, or on Insight Timer, you can just do some presets times, and then if you like background noise, you can have background noise.
And just a quick interjection here. If you haven't discovered this already, we do have a handout available for you to download, and it does list these. So if you're like me, sometimes scribbling notes as I go and listen to stuff, we've done some of that work for you. So you'll find that in the handouts area of this webinar.
Awesome. Thank you, Summer.
Yeah.
So I want to make it even easier for you to consider mindfulness. If you don't want to take a class, if you don't want to get an app, mindfulness, again, I'll say it again, is being present in the current moment without judgment. So some of the best times to do this, like think about chopping. A lot of times our brains are just able to chop. And you can chop. I've seen you chop it 3 times. So now you can log off and start thinking of other things, and I'll keep that action happening with your hand. Driving, I think how many people have driven to the same store they've been driving to for 10 years. They know the way so well that their brain allows them to log off, think of something else entirely, and then it's almost like a movie is running in your brain because you are either forward or backward. So you're either imagining something that's going to come or you're recalling events of the past, and you are then not driving, and then you get to the store and you're like, I don't totally remember driving here. I'm sure lots of people have had that experience. There's clear research that also shows that the majority of people in car accidents say, I didn't even see them. And they literally didn't see them because they were in their mind when the person came out in front, or the biker came out in front, or the car came out in front. So driving is a wonderful time to practice, but I encourage any time, if you're waiting, if you're walking, if you're driving, if you're chopping, be in that moment. Start with your feet, feel your feet, look around, think about that mindful versus mindful. We want to be mindful, and we want to notice the trees. We want to notice, oh, there's a blue car in front of me. Oh, they're slowing down. Oh, I see a kid on a bike. Oh, I see some kids way ahead playing with a ball. Like being really aware. And then when you're walking meditation is actually part of the MBSR course. So paying attention to what does it feel like in your body when you move? And these are just things you're just noticing. So it's just get curious, start noticing, being aware. The other really wonderful way to practice mindfulness is to think about your senses. So if you're just sitting, what am I smelling? What's the temperature? My bottom is on the seat. You just kind of start paying attention. Do I hear any sounds? Don't try to identify the sounds. Remember, we're not in judgment form here. We're just going, oh, there's a whooshing sound. Interesting. You know, and it's just all curious observation. It's not identifying and labeling and planning, because then we switch into that part of our brain that's trying to go forward. So those are some examples to just be aware. In terms of body awareness, we know that folks who are more in tune and can tune in really quickly to their heart rate are actually more in tune with their emotions and are more able to regulate their emotions and their nervous system. So remember, the whole point of that nervous system conversation was we're going forward and backward. We need to be right now. Well, we want to be right now because we want to be in the rest and repair. And you can override your nervous system if you pop into fight or flight because you're thinking about something you saw in the news. By doing these things, you can pop yourself back into your rest and repair, or rest and digest, as Summer said. So we want to consider all these ways that we can be aware of our body. Okay, you can start with a body scan. You know, little kids are really good at body scans, like feel your toes, feel your knees, like just go all the way up your body. And again, it's not judgment. So if your knee hurts, it's not, oh, dang, that knee hurts, I want to resist what's happening right now. No, it's just, okay, my knee hurts, and then moving on. It's just observation and being in that present moment to allow for that rest and repair nervous system to kick in. So now we're going to even take it another step further and practice the simplest version of mindfulness, or a nervous system overdrive or override, excuse me. We don't want overdrive. We want override. And so it's breathing. And the breathing that I teach to my patients is called square breathing, but you can really do any version of this breathing that feels comfortable to you. So we're going to practice this together, but before we do, I want to tell you, if you have any trouble with this breathing, you can do it yourself. You can do it at a lower count. So if I'm counting 4s, you can count 2s. If you are the type of person who really likes doing this, you can build up to 5, 6, 7, 8. Another really popular version is called 4-7-8. So that's inhaling and then holding and then exhaling for 4 count, 7 count, 8 count. we're just going to do the simplest version of square breathing. And this was actually taught to me several years ago when I was in a conference, and it was taught by a PTSD specialist. And she taught it to help people because she used it regularly to help people in the middle of a panic attack flop into their rest and repair nervous system. So breathing is just the simplest version. So we go from our complicated version, take a class, go outside the house, pay for an MBSR course, to practice mindfulness with an app, to practice these simple awareness of the present moment without judgment in life, walking, shopping, driving, to breathing. It's just the simplest version, and some would argue probably one of the most effective versions. But so I want you to notice first, just take a moment, take some inventory. Remember I said people who are really in touch are better able to regulate their emotions. So take a moment and just notice how you feel. Just really like high level, no detail, just how you feel. And now I'm going to have you either lower your eyes or close your eyes, whatever you feel comfortable with, depending on how you're sitting or laying. Hopefully you're not standing this whole time, but if you are, that's awesome. Maybe you're walking. Really notice your feet and your bottom if you're sitting, but feet and bottom, just kind of notice the heaviness of them, the weight of them on the chair, the floor. And start to kind of wiggle your feet around enough to just notice that all four parts of your foot are touching the floor. Now I want you to imagine roots growing from the bottoms of your feet down, down, down to the center of the earth, tethering you, grounding you, stable, secure, safe, connected. When we breathe, we're going to breathe like a square. So right now, just take a couple normal breaths. And I'm going to count, as you can see the image on the screen, the inhales, holding it in, exhales, holding it out. Okay, let's inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold it in, 2, 3, 4, let it out, 2, 3, 4, hold it out, 2, 3, 4. Couple of normal breaths. Let's inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold it in, 2, 3, 4, hold it out, 2, 3, 4, hold it out, 2, 3, 4. Sorry about that. Couple normal breaths. Okay, last one. Let's inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold it in, 2, 3, 4, let it out, 2, 3, 4, hold it out, 2, 3, 4. Some normal breaths. I invite you now just to take a moment and see if you notice anything different. Notice how you feel. Does it feel different than it did before? I do this often with patients in the exam room, and it's amazing how I can just feel like both myself and patient, just everything's a little bit calmer. So that is a tool that I recommend people use. I tell people, you can do that in the grocery store. You can do that in your car. You can do that at work at your desk. You can do it in line in the, I don't know, at Disneyland. You can do it anywhere anytime. Nobody needs to know what you're doing. You don't necessarily have to close your eyes, but just take that conscious moment to take those nice deep breaths in whichever pattern feels most comfortable to you, whichever count feels most comfortable to you, a rectangle or a square, and use that as a powerful tool to get some ownership over your nervous system and calm down some of that excess chatter in your brain. So wrapping up, as you can see, the majority of these books shown here are Jon Kabat-Zinn books. I often recommend Mindfulness for Beginners, the one on the complete right. It's not his first book, but it is for beginners. So if you have little experience, that's a great one to start with. Good Morning, I Love You is, Shauna Shapiro is a PhD who was a student of Jon Kabat-Zinn. She has an amazing TED Talk. I would recommend you watch that. But her book, she is a beautiful storyteller, and I love the way she describes mindfulness and how it's helped her in her personal life, but also she describes stories at work of how it's been really life-changing for lots of people. So it's a shift in perspective, and actually what I want more than anything is for you to feel empowered. I think a lot of times when we talk about lifestyle changes, people think, oh, well, I don't want to eat more salad. I don't want to exercise every day. That stresses me out having to put that on my to-do list. So the simplicity of mindfulness and the enormous impact it can have on your health is a great first step. And so I think all of these books are great if, again, you're a book kind of learner. And I think that's it for me.
Nice. Thank you so much, Amy. I really appreciate these book recommendations and the TED Talk recommendation too. I will definitely be watching that later. I want to take a moment here to do a little transition into our question and answer. So I am going to stall a little bit and just give our listeners some time to add their questions for you in the chat. So while that's happening, I want to remind everyone that we will have a recording available if you'd like to share this with your friends, your family, if you even want to rewatch and just practice that short breathing exercise. I personally felt like, ironically, well, not so ironically, a little lighter in my chest, actually. Could have been the pause from drinking coffee too, I suppose. However, I'm sure it was definitely the breathing. And we will have these all available for you at our website, and you'll get a follow-up email as well. And then let's go ahead and see if we have any questions from our audience. Okay, great.
And that I just wanted to say really quickly, Summer, that square breathing image is on the handout, I think, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. And speaking of that, one of the questions is this also called box breathing? Is that something?
Oh, maybe. There's so many different names for it and different versions of it. Like I said, that 478 is a very popular way to do it. Rectangle breathing, you know, just kind of stretching out those holds. It really, I don't think matters a whole lot, except that you are having a clear pause, a clear time where you're inhaling, holding, exhaling, holding. So I think, yeah, whatever, you can call it whatever name you want. But I haven't heard of box breathing in particular, but it's probably the same.
Yeah, I think it is. We do have a couple of I'll say kind of technical, maybe medical questions. I'm not sure which category to put these in. These are some good ones. If we don't know the exact answer, we can always try to track it down and follow up later, but I'll go ahead and just ask these.
Okay.
Just to throw them out there. So one is, let's see, if you have tachycardia, can mindfulness help with that? I have PACS, and I know that should help, but I don't know about the other issue.
Yeah, I think so with tachycardia, if it's been determined that it's not an abnormal rhythm, that it's a normal, what we call sinus tachycardia, which happens with some folks. First step is to make sure that it's just a normal rhythm, a sinus tachycardia. And second step is to make sure that you don't have any underlying causes for having that. So thyroid, anemia, dehydration, there's some things that your primary doctor can help you with determining why you might have that. Now, if it's sort of been determined that everything looks good and you're just one of these people who runs a little bit tachycardic, then yes, mindfulness and breathing especially, and meditation will most certainly help with that. The PACs, that is an early beat that comes in from the top chamber. PVC comes in early from the bottom chamber. And both of those can also be helped in some instances. It just really depends on the person. But yes, all of that can be helped by mindfulness.
Excellent, thank you. And then one other question, if you have heart damage, can it be reversed by doing the things that you suggested today?
So again, there's always sort of caveats to these things. It depends on why you have a damaged heart muscle, or what I often call a weakened heart muscle. If you've had a heart attack, then has that vessel been repaired? Is there good blood flow now? Are you taking the medications that your cardiologist or medical provider has recommended for you to take to sort of create an environment in which your heart can rebuild itself? But then also, all of these lifestyle things, including the mindfulness, yes. The data for heart disease in particular, both prevention of heart disease, but also therapy after heart disease is really remarkable. There's different kinds of mindfulness, of course. There's some mindful movements you can think of, like yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong. Tai Chi and Qigong in particular have been studied with heart disease and people who have had heart disease, cardiac events, or have that damage to their heart muscle or to their heart. And there's been some great data on that improving.
Nice. Yeah, that was actually, you kind of answered, I think, Joseph's question here, but I'm going to just dig a little further because he's asking, do you have any experience or stories to tell about mindfulness specifically helping people with heart disease? Any, quote, case reports that would be interesting and encouraging for the audience?
That is a really good question. I think I have several patients in my clinic who I see either in the lifestyle clinic or outside of the lifestyle clinic. And I think that improving that mindfulness, I have one person in particular that I'm thinking of, and we just talked a lot about continuing to come into the moment. Mindful eat, as one of our guests mentioned, I talked a lot with her about mindful eating in particular. She lived in a stressful home as well, and just to continue practicing that mindfulness. And she did definitely return with feeling improvement in her overall well-being because of that practice. That's the thing, though, is mindfulness is a practice. So what the person who taught my mindfulness course said is the only difference between the student and the teacher is that the teacher comes back faster to that mindful now moment. So it's always going to be an evolution and a practice, and it shouldn't be expected that this is going to be a quick solution. This is a long-term life practice. And what I find personally is that I ebb and flow. So I have times when I am really mindful throughout my day, and I am able to have those moments where I'm walking down the hall and really paying attention to my feet, or driving and really focusing. And then, like everyone else, I have times where the chatter sort of takes over, and I may have a couple of weeks where I'm not meditating or I'm not being as mindful. And I can usually end up feeling that in my body. I have more headaches, I have more shoulder tension, I have more tummy upset because I'm just spending too much time in my fight or flight nervous system. So I think for me personally, it's just, it's an ebb and flow, and it's a practice. It's like working out a muscle.
I like that because it gives us permission to not be perfect. Like I think of
Right.
the phrase progress, not perfection. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so important. It's like we are going to ebb and flow, and just to kind of
Mm-hmm.
know that, we can always kind of get back on the horse, so to speak. Um,
That's right. Yep. Just keep coming back to center. Just keep resetting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you've got some thank yous posted
Oh, good.
here with appreciation. And then we also have a question from Barbara. This one's interesting. Are you supposed to breathe through your nose or through your
Mm.
mouth, or does it really matter?
So again, I tend to be sort of less technical. I think really it's about you're focused on your breath, and that's why it's successful, is because your focus is not forward or backwards. So I think whatever works for you. I have some patients who just are so uncomfortable with again, like the length of time in the count, or just only breathing through their nose. There's a lot of people who do inhales through the nose, exhales through the mouth. Some yogic practices are just all nasal. So it really depends on your comfort level. I would say find what works best for you and what feels best to you. Um, just as we did that little group of 3, experiment a little bit with that, and sometimes try inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. Just see experiment with it and feel what feels most effective to you and where you notice the change, because it's really all about you and individualizing it to your practice. Because that's what's going to make it the most beneficial.
Nice. Well, you've got a go Cougs
Oh,
comment in here,
yeah.
so I have to throw that one in. And then
Cougs always say that to each other.
Uh, I want to read Nanette's here because I think this is a really great one. She says, "Wonderful presentation. Your voice was so calming. Thank you." And then here's the tip I really like. I do this breathing in the doctor's office right before they take my blood pressure. If
Mm.
I don't do the breathing, my numbers are higher, which results are my truer picture. Do I do the deep breathing or not before getting blood pressure checked? Great question and great tip.
That is a great question. And here's what I would say. Like when we're looking at blood pressure, some people talk about white coat hypertension or white coat high blood pressure, like being nervous. If you're a nervous person and you're nervous in the doctor's office, and you also get nervous or stressed in traffic, and you also feel nervous or stressed at home, then your blood pressure is high all the time. But if it's truly just that you get nervous in the doctor's office and the rest of the time you feel calm, then it probably is just the doctor's office. So I would think more about less about the breathing or not the breathing, and more about what feels like your most authentic state. So if that feeling after your breathing is sort of the authentic state you're in most of your day, then that's an authentic blood pressure read. We certainly know that these breathing techniques can help lower blood pressure. In fact, I often, if somebody's blood pressure is really high and either that's out of character for them or it hasn't been high on their home machine, I often will do some breathing techniques with them and then recheck it, and it will be lower. So I think the reflection, because if we're deciding like whether or not to use medicines to change that blood pressure, it's really about, are you going to be committed to keeping yourself in that state that you're in after the breathing, or are you going to be in kind of that heightened state all the time and you just happen to be doing that breathing? Then that's probably not a super reliable. Hopefully that makes sense, that explanation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Amy. I'll just give a final last comment because we are close to time. Andrew is recommending the podcast 10% Happier. So just to throw that out there,
Fun.
it's fun to get tips from the audience as well. So thanks for sharing
Yes.
that. And then I'm just going to go ahead and transition us. As a reminder, you can always sign up for our monthly e-newsletter and hear about these future webinars in advance so that you can make sure to be alerted and register early. There's also health news and local events happening, so be sure to subscribe. And then finally, as soon as I close this webinar, you'll get prompted to take our survey. Please do that so that we can make improvements for the next time. And then finally, I just want to thank you all for spending your lunchtime with us today, and a very special thanks to our presenter, Amy Surface, for sharing her expertise on mindfulness for heart health. Until next time, stay healthy and be well.